What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another page from the playbook. This is Nate bringing to you guys episode 2 of our in-depth series where we look at all 32 NFL teams and give you just basically a season outlook for this upcoming year. We've got a month until football starts, right? It is here. We had a football game last night. Doesn't matter, but it was a football game that I didn't know the score to, and I love that. That is so exciting. It is almost here. Cannot wait. So we got to start pumping these out to you guys. So today's team, we're going to talk about the Cleveland Browns. Before we get into today's video, guys, I just want to give a special shout out to today's sponsors, starting with Goldfine and Bowles, Lawyers for the Injured. Personal injury, workers' compensation, those are their two things, but any sort of legal advice, they're the people to call. Give them a phone call, 309-673-5144. Tell them we sent you, okay? And I'd also like to shout out SeatGeek for sponsoring today's video as well. Use promo code PlaybookSports on their website to get $20 off your first purchase of $30 or more. Let's get back to the video. So last season, Browns fans, real quick, if you had told me that you guys were going to lose Deshaun Watson to an injury, just in general, if you told me, yeah, we're going to lose Deshaun Watson, I'd be like, oh, okay, you guys are going to suck. That's okay. You bounce back when he's healthy, you'll be just fine. But I mean, they made the playoffs. They won 11 games. That was super impressive. It just shows how well constructed that Cleveland Browns roster truly is, which we all know Addison loves that Cleveland Browns roster. So with Deshaun Watson coming back, right, with Watson this year healthy, is this Browns team still a legit contender? Not just for playoffs, but to make a run in the playoffs, to make a Super Bowl run in the playoffs. Is this roster good enough to do it when they can make a run like they did with Flacco last year? Let's dive into this and see what we got in Cleveland. We're going to start where we always start, in the coaching, talking head coach Kevin Stefanski. He's done a fantastic job since he took over the Browns in 2020, including 2 11-win seasons during his tenure. That is unheard of, guys. That's unheard of out of Cleveland. You think about before that, Cleveland was always the worst. They were just always terrible, constantly in purgatory. And I give Kevin Stefanski a lot of credit for that. I know that the GM has built this team, and Kevin Stefanski deserves credit, and so does he. But I remember days when Browns won one game in 2 seasons. They went 0-16 and 1-15 in back-to-back years. I mean, fans were wearing paper bags to the stadium. You're not seeing that anymore, Browns fans. This is a new team, kind of a new organization, and I really like Kevin Stefanski. With having Flacco in there, right, just putting Joe Flacco in there last year, the offense still moved probably even better than it did with Deshaun Watson, honestly. The offense was still great, and I like to give credit there for Kevin Stefanski. Without Nick Chubb, without his quarterback, he led that team to 11 wins and a great defense. Defense led by defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz, fantastic in his first year as Browns defensive coordinator. Obviously, they've got a ton of talent on that side of the ball. He really did help them kind of put it all together. The Browns had the pieces, but it wasn't totally all put together in 2022. Last year, though, we really saw this defense take a step, man. And at home, they were allowing 10 points a game? They were unbelievable at home last year. The Browns defense was absolutely, they on average allowed the fewest yards per game last season. That's unbelievable. They also brought in Ken Dorsey to be the offensive coordinator for this team. But we all know Kevin Stefanski's running the offense there, not Ken Dorsey. I don't really plan on thinking about that a whole lot. I really like this coaching staff. I think Kevin Stefanski is a great offensive-minded head coach, as he has shown. And Jim Schwartz, in 1 year as the DC for the Cleveland Browns, looked the part. He absolutely looked the part. So let's dive into this roster, starting in their depth chart, and we're going to start at QB. I really think that it's fair to say, just based off of statistics and what we saw last year, that Joe Flacco was far and away the best quarterback on this roster last season. Old man Joe Flacco came in and lit it up. He averaged 323 passing yards a game versus Deshaun Watson's 185 passing yards per game. He threw 6 more touchdowns than Deshaun Watson, and he had a higher passer rating. He just flat out outplayed Deshaun Watson, and he was picked up off of the couch. He was at home doing nothing. And he came in, picked up this offense quick, and had it absolutely rolling. The Browns didn't bring him back. They said, nah, we're good. We're going to go a different route, and we're going to bring in Jameis Winston to be the backup. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully they don't need him. Hopefully Deshaun Watson, that they're hoping and praying that Deshaun Watson returns to 2020 Deshaun Watson and not whatever form of Deshaun Watson they've had for the last few seasons. If he comes out and doesn't just play better football, doesn't play like he did for Houston, that contract and that trade just looks worse and worse and worse for them, especially with how good Houston looked last year, having knocked the Browns out of the playoffs. Hopefully you don't need Jameis Winston, and hopefully Deshaun Watson comes back. But I'm skeptical, man. We haven't seen Deshaun Watson play good football in 4 calendar years. So we need to see something from him, or else they're going to have to they can't really look for a new quarterback, right? They have too much guaranteed money on the deal. So I'd have to look at SpotTrack and see exactly how much money they can void by releasing him if it comes to that. But man, you got to see something from Deshaun this year. You absolutely have to. Running back room, I cannot wait to see Nick Chubb get back on the field. He is one of, if not the best running back in football, just pure runner. The dude is such a hoss, absolute stud. Hated to see that injury last year. That was one where football fans alike all groaned when they saw him get hurt like that, because that's just not something we want to see for a player like Nick Chubb. Just universally loved, man. I'm sure they hate playing him, but I'm sure his rivals even respect the hell out of him because he is so good. And then we've got Jerome Ford backing up again. He did well in spells, but you don't want to see him. We want to see Nick Chubb. Wide receiver, I think they've got 3 solid receivers here. Amari Cooper has been fantastic. It really stinks that Dallas picked Michael Gallup over Amari Cooper, considering Michael Gallup is now either out of the league. I think he just retired. Either way, they picked him over Amari Cooper, and Amari Cooper's a bona fide number 1 receiver. They also brought in Jerry Jeudy from Denver. No, he has not quite lived up to that first-round billing we were all expecting out of him with his crisp route running and his very sure hands and his way above average athleticism. He just hasn't put it all together. But let's be totally fair. Who was really his quarterback in Denver? What has he worked with? Russell Wilson, who could not play, who had Nathaniel Hackett calling plays, big mistake, and then couldn't work with Sean Payton. They were at odds and ends the whole time. So no, he hasn't played with a high-end quarterback. Let's just say that. I'm interested to see what he can do with a high-end quarterback. Is that Deshaun Watson? I don't know, but maybe. And then Elijah Moore's a decent number 3. However, after these 3 guys, there's really not much there. So you cannot afford to lose one of them, because there goes a lot of your passing game. And God help them if Amari Cooper gets hurt for any amount of time. But they've got 3 solid receivers with low depth. Not much depth here. Offensive line, no changes up front. These boys are fantastic. This offensive line has been great for years. This was really their staple for a long time. I think that their starting 5 is one of the best in the NFL, if not the best, and it feels like it has been for a while. And also, go look at their offensive line coach. Look at that hair, people. I'm sure I'm posting a picture of him on here. How can you not be an amazing unit when this guy's coaching your team? Come on. I love it. Love it. Defensively, on the defensive side of the ball, I do like the addition of Zadarius Smith, who will rush alongside of Myles Garrett. So they've got 2 solid edge rushers, again, coming after the quarterback. And Myles Garrett isn't a solid edge rusher. He's the best edge rusher other than maybe TJ Watt. You can argue it. But Myles Garrett is that freaking dude. He looks like a superhero in real life. He's so good. So good. And then they also brought in a couple new linebackers in vet Jordan Hicks and Devin Bush. Some of those, I like those moves a lot. They've got fantastic depth on this defensive line. They've really got 6 defensive tackles who could see some legit playing time this year and rotate in and out. So you keep those guys fresh. You have Myles Garrett rushing off the edge along with Zadarius Smith. I really like that. And then this unit being coached up by Jim Schwartz again, I do think it has potential to once again be one of the best defenses in the entire NFL. Can they win 11 games on the back of that defense? Is the offense going to step up? There weren't a ton of changes to this depth chart, right? I didn't really have anything notable. Jerry Jeudy, really, is he the most notable one? Really, they're getting additions by returns from injury. Bringing back their stud running back, Nick Chubb. Getting him healthy again. Deshaun Watson getting healthy again. Can he be Deshaun Watson? We all know, but I don't know. We're going to find that out this year, and it'll be fun to watch no matter what. So will they improve on 11 wins? Will they reach 11 wins? Or are they going to regress? Let's look at their 17-game schedule. We're going to start this one out week 1. They take on the Dallas Cowboys, the 2 seed in the NFC last year. Cowboys were so good last year. Offensively, unbelievable. Even defensively, losing Trevon Diggs, it seemed like they really weathered that storm very well. They were so good, and I think they're going to be a trendy pick week 1, Dallas to go into Cleveland. I'm taking Cleveland in this game. You guys know I love Dallas. Love rooting for Dallas. They're my NFC team for sure. And I think the Browns shock some of the analysts here, and they get the win at home against a great Dallas Cowboys team. I like the physicality that the Browns bring. And to be fair for Dallas, at home, unstoppable, minus the playoff game. Unstoppable at home. On the road, they were very iffy. Very iffy. Not very great on the road. And they're in Cleveland here. If Deshaun Watson comes out and lays an egg, all bets are off, and it's probably the Cowboys to win this game. But if they're healthy, if Nick Chubb is playing in this game, and if Deshaun Watson just doesn't make the mistakes that he is prone to make, I think the Browns get the win here. I think the Browns get kind of a surprising Week 1 victory at home against the Cowboys to move to 1-0. Week 2 on the road against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I do have the Browns falling here. I think this is going to be a really close game. I think these are two teams that are absolutely going to be fighting for one of the wild card spots. I don't think either of them are going to win their division, but I think that they will definitely be fighting for a wild card spot. I'm going to go with the home Jacksonville Jaguars to get it done here in a game that is really going to be a close one. This one's like a coin flip game in my opinion. Week 3, they take on the Giants in Cleveland, and it's Cleveland all day, right? It's Cleveland all day to move to 2-1 on the year. They're just significantly better than the Giants everywhere. I don't need to do a whole lot of analysis here, guys. I'm sorry, Giants and Giants fans. I don't see anywhere where you can say we're better than them. Maybe at the edge rusher room, but when you have Myles Garrett, like he's so much better than everybody else, doesn't matter. I know Brian Burns is there, and I know Kayvon Thibodeau's there, and they're both real solid. Brian Burns is great, fantastic even, and Kayvon Thibodeau was solid last year. But either way, that doesn't matter. I don't care. It's Cleveland by 1,000,000 here. Cleveland at home, big win. Week 4 at Las Vegas. I don't care where this game is at because the Raiders are not going to be good. The Raiders aren't going to be good either. I'm sorry, Raiders fans, if you're watching this one. I just don't think you guys are going to be the greatest. I like Gardner Minshew. I think Gardner Minshew is fine. I don't know about Antonio Pierce's creativity as a head coach. I know he's a big players guy, and the players all love him. But he's not going to whip up something that has the defense surprised. He's not going to whip up something on the defensive side of the ball where the offense is like, whoa, what are they doing? He's a grinder kind of a guy who doesn't have the talent to be a grinder kind of the guy. They're not there. I think in this game, Gardner Minshew gets sacked 4 or 5 times, holding the ball too long, and Cleveland just doesn't let them run the ball. Zamir White doesn't get anything going, averages 3 yards a carry. They just can't get anything going on the offensive side of the ball, and Cleveland steamrolls them here. Give me Cleveland to win the game on the road and move to 3-1. Week 5, they travel to Washington to take on the Commanders. And I have written here, see Giants game. They're just better than this team all across the board. Everywhere you look, the Browns are better than Washington. I know it's on the road, and yeah, it's a mobile quarterback in Jaden Daniels. That will be something to keep an eye on. Can Jordan Hicks and Devin Bush contain him well with the QB spy? Do you move someone like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah down and just make him a QB spy because of Daniels' propensity to run the ball? We'll see what they do that game, but at the end of the day, the Washington Commanders just don't have the talent on the defensive side of the ball or the offensive side of the ball to keep up with a very good Cleveland Browns team. Cleveland 4-1 after 5 weeks. Pretty good start. Week 6, another great game here between two of the more physical teams in the entire NFL as Cleveland travels to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. The fact that this game's in Philadelphia once again leads me to go with the home team here when it's teams that are so similar in how they play and in how they like to dominate the trenches and they want to just be the more physical team up front. I like to go with the home team. I don't think this has anything to do with the officials, not in this one. I do think this will be a good game. I think the Philly offensive line can hold up against the Browns defensive line. And then you've got A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, two guys that are hard to cover for too long. Dallas Goedert. They brought in Saquon Barkley. I mean, the Eagles are loaded, man. They are absolutely loaded. I'm not even talking about their defense, which is loaded as well. I think the Eagles are going to bounce back this year in a big way. And I think that starts with a win at home against the Browns. If this game's in Cleveland, I'm taking Cleveland. But it's in Philadelphia. I'm going Philly here. Week 7, they host the Cincinnati Bengals. And later on in this series, we are going to have a very serious conversation about Cincinnati and what their season may or may not look like. But the short of it here, the Spark Notes version, is their offensive line is the key to their entire season. And if their offensive line, they have to prove to be competent before I'm even willing to give their offensive line the benefit of the doubt. I mean, we're seeing practice stuff already where three of the 4 defensive linemen are getting right through the 5 offensive linemen like it is nothing. That is a problem, Cincinnati. It is time to figure out that offensive line, man. And again, I'll get more into that later. I think Cleveland's defensive line is one of the best in football when you just look at who they have out there. And I don't think that Cincinnati's offensive line can hold up in this one. And it's in Cleveland, where Cleveland's defense was unbelievable last year. I think Joe Burrow's in for a long day here, and he's going to be closing his eyes and praying that he gets through this game because they're going to tee off on him, I'm afraid. So I'm going with Cleveland at home against the Cincinnati Bengals to move to 5-2 on the year. Week 8, Cleveland stays at home to take on the Baltimore Ravens. I'm giving them another win here. I'm giving Cleveland a victory in this game. I think Baltimore is the best team in this division. Until proven otherwise. But going into Cleveland, very, very hard. They always play the Ravens tough. Even last year when Deshaun wasn't playing well, his best game came against the Baltimore Ravens when they won, 35-33? He absolutely balled out. I think this is a classic AFC North slugfest game in Cleveland. Give me the home team to win this one in an ugly 13-10 or 17-14 game. And I'm just going to take the home team here and kind of cop out a little bit. Week 9 against the Chargers, another home game for Cleveland. Again, Cleveland at home is just a different animal, man. I don't see how the Chargers score on them. I don't see how. You guys tell me how. How are they going to do it? How's that offensive line going to hold up against this Cleveland defensive line? How are those receivers going to get open against Cleveland's secondary, which is really good? Who's Chargers' number one receiver? Is it Ladd McConkey? He's not going to beat Denzel Ward. He's just not. They aren't going to be able to move the ball. Herbert is already hurt. It is August 2nd, and Justin Herbert already has a foot injury. Yes, he'll probably be okay for the regular season, but is that going to linger? And if they start out slow, do they shut him down? I don't know. I do not see how the Chargers... I might eat a ton of crow, because I'm going to say this anytime I see the Chargers. I don't know how they're going to play. I don't know how they're going to score points. I don't know how they're going to defend anybody either. I'm just not high on them. It's Cleveland here for sure for me, especially at home, moving to 7-2, going into the Week 10 bye, smack dab in the middle of the season. Love this bye week. They've played 9 games. They've got 8 more games to go. I absolutely love that time for a bye week. Week 11, they go to New Orleans. I think this is a trap game. I think this is a game where you're like, oh, Saints suck. Derek Carr, not worried about them. I mean, they're old. They're not very good. They're constantly in cap hell. There's no way this team's any good. I think it's a trap game because you've got a long winning streak. You're coming off of a couple emotional victories at home against Cincinnati and Baltimore. You just had a bye week that was just in time to cool you down. Just in time to lose your momentum and completely stop it. And then you go waltzing into New Orleans with one eye on next week's game against Pittsburgh. And you get let down. I think this is a game that the Browns should not lose, but I think that they do. I think this is the perfect kind of trap, letdown sort of game, and I think they lose it and fall to 7-3 on the year. Still, obviously, in great shape, Browns fans. Week 12 against Pittsburgh. Fortunately for the Browns and their fans, I think they bounce back here, and I think that they get the home victory over the Pittsburgh Steelers in a game where these two teams are so similar. I said it a ton in the Steelers video, too. If you guys haven't seen that one, make sure you go check it out. I think these teams are just so similar, and when teams are so similar, I typically like to lead with the home team. And the Browns defense, I have said it so many times, I'm going to continue to say it. The Browns defense at home last year, and I'm basing this off of some last year, obviously, their defense was impeccable at home. I don't see how the Steelers get it done on the road here in a hostile environment like Cleveland. So I'm going with the Browns, moving them to 8-3 on the year. Great year so far. And then week 13, they get another pretty good one here at Denver. I don't care this game's in Denver. Don't care where this game is. Browns are just too physical a team, too good of a team. I will say Denver's building a pretty good offensive line if you haven't noticed. They've got some good pieces on the offensive line, but I don't like Bo Nix. You think I trust Bo Nix against Cleveland's defense? Yeah, he gets hit by Myles Garrett one time, and he's going to get rid of the ball so fast. It's going to be check down city because he's going to be terrified to take that hit again. I don't see any way Denver gets this done. And that their quarterback situation, bad. Roster's not terrible, but quarterback situation's a huge problem, and it's a rookie. I'm going with Cleveland here, moving them to 9-3 on the year. Week 14 against Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. Again, like I just said, similar to Week 12 2 weeks ago. Two teams very similar. They hate each other. They're rivals. Give me the home team. I'm going to move them to 9-4. Week 15, they take on the Kansas City Chiefs at home. It's going to be a very good game. But I do think it's a tough draw to take on the Chiefs late in the season because this is when they actually start trying and actually play football. I can't pick against the Chiefs here. I think this game is going to be a very good football game, though. This is going to be one that comes down to the wire, and it's like a field goal from Butker to win it for the Chiefs. I think the Browns absolutely hang tough with them the entire game. I could see this one going to overtime, truthfully. I think this is a great game. Ultimately, Kansas City pulls it out, moving the Browns to 9-5. Week 16, they travel to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. And I think that, again, I hate doing this, right? I hate doing it because I don't want to just take the home team every time it's a divisional matchup. But at the same time, Cincinnati, if they're completely healthy at this point in the season, I don't see how they lose at home to Cleveland. Cleveland's defense, fantastic at home. Very suspect on the road. And again, I'm assuming health. I'm not here to predict injuries, but assuming health, they're going to move. I think Cincinnati's going to be able to move the ball well. I think Cleveland will have a little bit harder time moving the ball in this game at Cincinnati. So I'm going with the home Bengals here, moving the Browns to 9-6 on the year. A little bit of a losing streak here. 3 games in a row, not what you want to see. Week 17, They take on your Miami Dolphins in Cleveland. And guys, I love doing this. Like, I know we're still a newer channel. We're still trying to grow. I really enjoy doing these things and talking football with you guys and going over these things. But sometimes I really hate having to do it because I've got to put aside my fandom and be objective. I've got to be truthful about these things. I can't be a homer and say, yeah, Dolphins 17-0. Easy money. The Dolphins at this point will likely be sitting in Week 17 about 10, 11 wins, in my opinion. That's probably where they'll be, playing for, maybe the 1 seed, more likely 2 or 3 seed. And just getting into the playoffs is what I would like. Just get in again. And in Cleveland, in the dead of winter, against a physical team like Cleveland, this is a nightmare matchup for Miami. A nightmare matchup. It's going to be freezing cold outside, and we are not nearly as physical as Cleveland is. AFC North games in the dead of winter for a South Florida team is a recipe for disaster. See the Baltimore Ravens game last year. I'm giving the Browns the victory here, moving the Browns to 10-6 with a huge game coming up in Week 18 as the Browns are fighting for their playoff lives, looking to sneak in as a wild card team, and they get a tough draw at Baltimore, who are fighting for the 1 seed at this point in the season. And this could very well decide the division, depending on how well the Bengals are doing and the Ravens are doing, because I think they're both going to be better than the Steelers, and the Browns are probably too far back at this point to go for the 1 seed or to win the division. I'm taking the home Ravens in this spot. The Ravens have the experience of winning big games like this. Cleveland doesn't. I know the Ravens haven't exactly been to a Super Bowl in a long time and really done anything for me to say that because they lost in the playoffs last year to the Chiefs, like everyone did. I mean, if the Ravens have already clinched the division and can't get the 1 seed or are locked into the 1 seed, then Cleveland wins this game in a blowout because they will try and the Ravens won't have to. If the Ravens are fighting for anything here, I think the Ravens win this game at home. And also, you don't want to go into the playoffs off of a loss at home to a rival. That's just bad juju. You don't want that. So I'm going to give the Ravens the win here, and assuming that the Ravens aren't like resting, right? We don't want, if the Ravens are resting players, then all bets are off. Cleveland's going to win this football game. But if this is mano a mano, both teams need the win. I like the Ravens in this spot at home to have the Browns finishing at 10-7 on the year. So yes, maybe a slight step back. They got a pretty tough schedule. They've got some tough games in here, but I still think this is a very good team that you're not going to want to come up against in the first round of the playoffs. They're going to be an impossible out as a wild card team at 10-7. I do think 10-7 gets them into the dance as either a 6 or a 7 seed, and no division winner is going to want that as their first matchup because Cleveland is going to come in and they're going to fight tooth and nail. This defense is so legit, and if Deshaun Watson just wants to play even average quarterback, that's all, just average quarterback, this team is going to be a tough out. I don't know if I can consider them a premier AFC team and a team that you're like, oh yeah, I like them as a pick to win the AFC and represent the AFC in the Super Bowl, but who knows? I guess that's why they play the games, right? So that's all I've got for you guys on today's in-depth breakdown on the 2024 Cleveland Browns. If you like the video, make sure you like the video. It does so many great things for our channel. If you're not already subscribed, just hit that subscribe button. It costs you nothing. It takes 2 seconds out of your day. We really appreciate it. It helps us out more than you guys know. So that's all we've got, and we will see you guys in the next in-depth breakdown for the 2024 NFL season.